There's a great article in the Financial Times this morning by Janan Ganesh, and I'd like to go through it. Janan Ganesh explores the Carter rule and offers an incisive analysis of the interplay between crises and reform in rich democracies. But his argument contains intriguing parallels in historical issues, and yet it falters in its deterministic framing and over-reliance on crises as political catalysts. Ganesh's juxtaposition of Jimmy Carter's presidency with Britain's 1970s malaise effectively is the basis of his thesis. The analogy to Thatcher's rise post-IMF humiliation is persuasive, underscoring the cyclical nature of reform in democracies. In order to get to Thatcher, we had to get to this depth of Callaghan, and the connections to Southern Europe's reforms post-Eurozone crisis adds a compelling global dimension to this analysis. The Carter rule, a nation's appetite for change hinges on the severity of the crisis that they're going through, is elegantly articulated. His examples such as France's pension reforms and Europe's delayed energy independence resonate with contemporary readers. And Ganesh's portrayal of democracies as cicatrized by past crises is both evocative and apt. And these scars, while healed, leave nations wary of proactive preventative reforms, reinforcing his argument about political inertia. While crises often catalyze reform, Ganesh's assertion that they are a necessary condition oversimplifies complex socio-political dynamics. For instance, Scandinavian countries routinely implement reforms without going through any acute crisis, undermining his deterministic thesis. Ganesh rightly criticizes the danger of strategic defeatism, but his own framework flirts with the same logic. By emphasizing crises as prerequisites for change, he risks implying that nations should passively await catastrophe, a troubling and counterproductive stance. He underestimates the role of political leadership in shaping political appetite for change. A good political leader can galvanize a nation. While he acknowledges the limits of agency, figures like Franklin D. Roosevelt or Margaret Thatcher demonstrate that vision and rhetoric can preemptively galvanize reform even without an acute crisis. The article's application of the Carter rule to Keir Starmer's premiership is underwhelming. Ganesh's analysis remains at the level of broad platitudes, failing to probe Starmer's policy substance or potential strategies to overcome public hesitance. His comparison to Carter, while intriguing, feels incomplete. Ganesh's piece could have benefited from exploring incremental change. Nations like Germany, nations like Britain under, for example, Wilson, favoured incremental improvement over crisis-driven reform. Why does his analysis omit such counterexamples? The role of institutions, public trust, national identity in shaping reform receptivity is conspicuously absent. There are the cultural factors, particularly today, are things like the influence of social media, the influence of television. In the 1970s, the thrust of not the 9 o'clock news and spitting image catalyzed change. The role of media and the way change is reported and encouraged, modern media amplifies and suppresses, in probably an equal degree, a public willingness for change. Ganesh's argument is provocative and historically informed, but its deterministic undertone and omission of nuanced counterexamples diminish its persuasiveness. His insights are ossified. His insights about democracies being scarred is compelling, but the piece ultimately succumbs to the very fatalism it seeks to criticize. Britain, like Carter's America, may indeed await a galvanizing enough moment, but this framing risks excusing inertia and diminishing the value of preemptive political vision. The problem is there isn't anyone on the political horizon in Britain who can actually seize control, who can change the way we do things. Yes, I know people will say, Farage, 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 like some sort of bad cold or an attack of flatulence. But it's not. Farage has nothing to offer. Farage couldn't even get Brexit done. Farage is the voice of discontent. He's not the voice of building anything. He's not the voice of achieving something. He's the voice of destruction. And in politics, as in marriage, dissatisfaction doesn't need to await a breaking point if the wounds of history are treated with wisdom, foresight, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.